is perfect. We should have about 8 people in class today, but you just never know who's going to come in and who is not. So it doesn't really matter because we've just got so many little things that we can use in our gardens. My gnome garden, I've got a gnome garden. Well, a variety of gnome gardens all over my garden. I've got little clusters of gnomes doing different things. So it's starting, although the garden's quite small, it is growing into a real, some friends come with their children and my grandchildren come. The first thing they do is go and count. The first thing they go and do is they count how many gnomes are there. Have you bought a new gnome? Where's the new gnome? Can we find the new gnome? So it really has become quite a feature. The children up the road come to count the gnomes as well with their dad. Whenever he comes down, they come with him. Can we go in the garden? Yes. And off they go and they start looking for the gnomes. So it's really much of a family affair. So it really is super to have everybody together. So gnomes are really special. And they are a part of what we are doing. I've been made host again, so we can continue. It's a lovely cold day in Perth, Australia today, as you can see by my woolly jacket that I've got. I've got a really interesting woolly jacket on, and so I am able to just keep warm because it is quite chilly today. Now let's share our screen and let's begin. My computer has decided it's cold today, so every now and again it misbehaves and it stops sharing. So I do apologize if it decides to do that to you today as well. All right, so welcome to my gnome garden. As I say, I've got a gnome garden. I will add some fairies to it now. This is my gnome in my garden, and he welcomes everybody. As you walk out onto the patio, there is this little gnome, because our garden's very small, and there's this little patio there. And yes, James.
So please look into the chat. Thank you.
Okay, will do. Thank you. Oh, yes, of course. Sorry. I think I've got to, let me just see if I can do it from here. Make you co-host. Yes. Thanks, James, because James got to be able to let people in and out and check them before they come in. So let's begin with gardens. Before we do, Mitchell, it's the first time I've had you, so I'll just run through the little bit of the beginning. We learn from each other, so if you've got your camera on, that's great. If you haven't, it's also fine, as long as you either chat in the chat box with us or you are able to be part of the class with us. And so welcome to being with us. If you want a recording afterwards, you can request it. I will send you the link for that. If you're joining by live streaming, welcome. But if you want to be able to participate, you do need to register and join. And then, as we all know, we're not paid to promote anything. So anything I might mention is purely something I use. I live in Perth, Australia with my husband, Michael, who's also a guide. And I've been an educator for 44 years. But now here at Get Set Up, all I do is I don't educate, I share. I share ideas, share thoughts, and I interact. And so it is awesome to be able to do that. I love creating and making things. Pastor, please begin the beginning of the session. Okay, thank you. All right. And so I enjoy creating and making things, including puzzles. And I have a great love of animals. So that's why I do my animal series. There's 5 of them now and 6 of them now in the series. I enjoy being a guide. So our objectives today are to come up with fairy garden ideas, gnome garden ideas, practical ways to create these gardens, and finally plants from fairy and gnome gardens. So if you look at the first picture, that is just some clay pots. Some of them are whole, some of them are part. And by putting them together, you can create a really beautiful little fairy or gnome garden or combination, as in the first picture there. Um, you've got them there to be able to do. You've got fairies and gnomes. You can put it on your patio. You can put it inside. You can put it outside. So you can create from tiny gardens to great big gardens or sections of your garden. So it really depends on you as to what you're wanting to do. I've got gnomes from this size to gnomes that are this size. So I've got a complete combination. If you look at the second one, they've used hanging baskets, and they, instead of planting your plants in them, they've just put them onto a rod at different heights going up. And each level is a different garden. And so you're able to see all the little things of one has got houses and another one's got an owl. And then you can put little ladders going up made out of sticks so that you can go from the one level to the next level and go up. So it truly is your imagination is your limit. If you just use your imagination, or if you're not can't think of things, go on to Pinterest. I've got a page there where you can, I've got all my gnomes and things. And there are hundreds to collect from all different sources. There are amazing resources there. So these are just a few of them. When I started to research fairy and gnome gardens, I realized that there's so much more to creating these amazing little gardens. They are really beautiful, from the size of a teacup to a tree in your garden that you just feel you'd like to turn this tree into something magical. And you can do this so easily by just putting things into there. And then we are a little doorway, a little ladder, another doorway further up, maybe a little fairy looking out of one of the doorways, or a gnome. And so you can attach these to your tree that is growing naturally in your garden, and it just enhances this whole area and makes it into something almost magical. So your limitation is not according to what the size. Size is irrelevant. It's what you would like to put into whatever. And later on, we're going to talk about the plants that you can plant from the tiniest garden to the biggest garden, and a way of changing some of your bonsais if you have bonsais. Now, find a corner of your garden that you would like to have as something special. Here is a retaining wall. The one on the right is just a retaining wall. And against the retaining wall, coming down to the lower level, a little fairy garden has been created with little houses, and you can make your own houses using Coke bottles. I actually send you a plan of how to do it, so that if you want to make your own houses out of different things, you can do it. If you're doing it where it's protected from the rain, you can even make your little houses out of toilet rolls. There's my little toilet roll house that I've made. Let me just stop sharing for a second. And go to a speaker view. There's my little one. I've made it out of a toilet roll. And all I've done is taken a light, one of these press touch lights that I can put underneath to light it up in the evening. So you can put it somewhere where the rain's not going to get to it, because unfortunately, being paper or card, it won't last that long if it's outside. But if it's on your patio where it's basically protected, you can make an amazing little garden. Or if you've got an indoor one, you can work with that. And that's where your Smurf garden would come into, Marlene. You could use your Smurf garden in that as well. And that would be really awesome. So, using what you've already made from other classes, you can create different things. And so, it really is special to be able to do that. So, let's continue. If you've got anything that you'd like to ask at any stage, please just interrupt. Press your space bar and interrupt what we are saying, because it's so easy to miss something and you want to say it now. So please do. So here is your little garden that's been made. You've made little steps that you can build out of little stones and pieces of slate that you would cut them and put them in there. There are so many ways that people teach you to make your own ones. You can buy as well, as we will look at just now. I've bought a few. But I mean, look at the bottom of this tree. Isn't it beautiful? Putting little pieces of wood going up to the door, and at the doorway, a fairy or a gnome would be awesome. You've made some little mushrooms to go at the bottom, or planted mushrooms for that matter. And there you've got just a little corner that is something special. So think about where you would like to make special places. And it doesn't only have to be one, it can be a variety of them. Now, something old to something new. On the right, we've got an old clay pot, a broken one. It's got into pieces. Why throw it away? Turn it into a multi-layer garden. And you can add a house to it, make it into a fairy garden or a gnome garden by having a pot or the base of the pot that is still fine as your base, and then build your way up using the different plants that I'll suggest a bit later. And those then help to make it into an amazing thing. So it doesn't have to be destroyed or lost. You can use what you already have in order to make it. You can also use an old wheelbarrow. An old wheelbarrow can turn into an awesome garden too. Just by putting some soil into it and planting some miniature plants. Then you can put it next to a tree. There they've made a little ladder out of sticks to a door on the tree. So now you've included your tree and your garden all into one and turned it into something magical and special. So it really does make amazing things for you to be able to do. What do you think of those, Marlene?
I'm just fascinated with your creative ideas using the clay pots and the breakable clay just pieces, how you can incorporate rocks and the green, and I just love it. Yeah, because I'm into that with rocks and seashells. I have seashells outside
Oh,
in the garden as well. I have like little
ah,
swan a swan that's a planter, so I
yeah.
did a little bit of a beach kind of a look, but I'm loving this look. I can incorporate that in a different part of my garden. I love it though. It really, looks like a lot of fun
It is a
to
lot of fun.
create.
By the way, you can leave your microphone on. It's just the two of us now, so it's great. So you can continue to just leave it on. Whoever Mitchell was either dropped out or left, and the others haven't been allowed in. So they've just got to stay out. There have been a few strangers that are not supposed to come,
Oh,
trying to come in. So they are being very vetted very carefully before they're allowed in. Now, so here we've got so many interesting ways of doing your pots and your plants. And um, so often you see something and think, oh, it's broken, I'm going to have to throw it. No,
right.
find out how you can create it into something different. Now, this is part of my gnome garden, well, three different parts of my garden. I've got a water feature for the birds. And at the base of it, I've put a couple of little gnomes with little plants growing around them. That's just been started, so it's not quite established yet. I have planters along the wall, and in each of the planters, I've got a gnome reading a book. So I bought 4 of them, and they're all sitting on the wall reading their books, and they are really enjoying their time reading their books there. So then at a different part of the garden, I've got a whole lot of little violas growing, and I went into the forest and found this interesting piece of wood that's tall and thin. So husband and I carried it back from the forest. There's still one more I want from the forest.
Cool.
We just haven't got it yet. And I've placed that in a strategic part of my little garden. And because it's small, I've chosen small gnomes. So all the small gnomes are playing and jumping and having fun in that piece of wood with plants growing around them. And so they are very happy in that section. Then slightly further over, I've got a lot of plants growing, and then a number of these little gnomes in amongst all the small plants. So some are on mushrooms and some are digging, and some are, so it's a real little garden full of little creatures, and they all have fun playing in their gardens. So those are just 3 sections of my garden. But I've got a few others. I've got a water feature. It's a pond. It's actually somebody's water feature that I turned into a pond. And so it's on the ground, it's flat. And then I've got my gnomes around there, and the birds fly in amongst the gnomes and they swim, and the little lizards come to drink. And of course, my bandicoot comes to drink there as well. So everybody goes in and out amongst the gnomes and has fun in the garden. And so really it is a lovely environment for all of them to be in. And I've got them in all sorts of pots and things around the garden. Now here is using pots to make multi-story gardens. Who would have ever thought of creating something like this? You've got your old tubs that you use to wash the dog, and old pots that you've got that are really not for cooking anymore. Turn them into multi-story gardens and homes for different creatures, different things on different levels. And so you can have a real variety of stuff. The broken pot again, I mean, that for me is so beautiful that you've used all the little scrap pieces placed in there with plants growing down it, or placed at an angle so that they fit. And I mean, that little fairy at the top with her little garden is absolutely gorgeous. And that can be outside, it can be on the patio, it can be inside. So you can really have them around and about. And you get the little fences, or you can make them out of your popsicle sticks. But you get the little fences, so you can put up a little fence. I saw yesterday your old plastic forks that you get when you go to McDonald's and places like that. They use the tines of the forks as the fence.
Oh, I love these
Which
clever ideas.
I think is absolutely awesome. So instead of throwing them away, you've got all these tines and they've made a fence. Hasn't cost you anything. You've created a new fence for your garden. But really, they are so simple to make. You, as I say, with just using popsicle sticks, you can make them. You can use them using those. You can buy those little wooden ones. You can use those. They can make ladders out of this, because this has got actually got sort of wire in it, so you can turn it into a set of stairs going up, so that they can climb up the stairs and go up the stairs. So it's creative. It's however you wish to be. You can create amazing things with this. So you can turn your garden into a section of your garden into a gnome or fairy garden so easily, inside and outside.
Oh, that is so creative.
So there are,
yeah, I was going to say, so you there's certain stores that carry, I don't know if Michael's would carry the little figurines or
Yeah,
the
well,
homes.
our dollar store, similar to your
The
dollar
dollar
store,
store?
they
Oh.
carry, well, ours do. Ours are called Rave and Red Dot. They carry them, and those are our basically, and the reject shop. They all carry them. They carry all these little things in different sections. You
Oh,
just go and look
have
for
to look.
the sections, and you find them. And there are a lot of really amazing little things that you can get to put into the multi-stories. I mean, for instance, you can make it, or you can buy yourself a little swing. Let me stop sharing and go to view and give me speaker view. Here is here's just a little swing that you can make. You could make it out of a piece of wood, bendable wood, and then you just add your swing to it. And then you could you could use a piece of wood like this, and you could put your gnome on it or your fairy, and they could be swinging on the swing. So
love it. That is so cute.
you can also buy an interesting piece that is shaped like a pot or shaped like a plant. So you could put this onto your tree, and there's your door on the tree. But you can make it yourself by using clay and putting the clay around any size that you want, and then just putting little stones and some moss onto it. You can then make doors and put them on. Popsicle sticks make wonderful doors. And so you can make these to put around a tree or around a plant that is quite thick. And then you've got your doorway that says hello and welcome.
That's right.
You can also make yourself with your popsicle sticks. You can make little signs that say fairy village or fairy forest or gnome home or wherever you want. And then you've got your little signpost, which tells you where to go. You can also make bigger ones in your garden that are big enough for other people to read, pointing to the gnomes or pointing to the fairies. And then, of course, you can buy your little fairies to place in them. And also your little welcome signs. You can write welcome on a stone. And then you've got your, and you can also write fairy home. You can write lots of things on a stone. They work very well. Your little mushrooms you can buy. I've got a fairy, and I've got a mushroom with a fairy. Absolutely cute. And of course, you can buy the little homes as well that they live in. So you've got all of these to add to your fairy home that you are busy building. But of course, you can go and look in nature. This is from our forest. It's a seed pod. But this, with your little fairy next to your seed pod, I mean, look at that. That immediately makes something.
That's cute.
Make something so interesting. So look for seed pods when they are letting go their seeds. This one looks like this when it starts. So that's also a very interesting pod. And so I can put that into the garden with its dry leaves behind, with a little gnome or fairy next to it. And you've got a feature. You don't have to have amazing things to make the feature work. Use things that you've got, and there are so many ideas on the internet that you can use with that. So you really can have so much fun with that. All right, so let's continue with what we are doing. I'm glad you like what you've seen.
I
So
do.
there are,
It's really fun.
and if you look here, they've taken little pieces of wood, they've taken a stick, cut the stick up, and then just tied it together with twine or glued it together to go from one pot to the next. So it looks like you can climb up it and go from one section up to the next, and so on. So you really can have an amazing time with it and be able to get it to work. It really is super. So yeah, the sky's the limit when it comes to that. Now, to build your own fairy and gnome garden, you need to have some idea of different things that you might need to get started. So you need small plants, plants that are not going to take over the whole area. You need some little houses that possibly you've built or you've bought. You can make the most amazing furniture from popsicle sticks for your fairy garden. You really can. There are so many
Yeah.
different things. You can use a bowl, a pot, a basket, anything that you would like to use. And little stones, of course, always work very, very well indeed. And then some of the plants that you're going to want to use, we're going to go into the plants in a bit more detail in a few minutes, but you've got balsam, you've got celonia, you've got asparagus fern, moss rose, impatiens, verbena, Scotch moss, hen and chicken. And if you want to have a garden that is a herb garden, but also your fairy garden, you can then use things like creeping thyme, woolly thyme, dwarf rosemary, and chives. All of those can go into your little garden that you put on the windowsill in the kitchen, and you've got your fairies there or gnomes there, or fairies and gnomes, and have then got all the herbs that you require for your cooking. And you can just go and pick what you want and cook at the same time. So it's then a practical garden. So that can be your herb garden. You can use definitely use succulents. They don't grow too big. You can use dwarf conifers as well to put them together in them. But I think those are, in fact, on the next one. Yeah, here we go. Here are some of our plants. So you've got your herbs, you've got your creeping thyme, and you've got your chives, and you've got your dwarf rosemary. So they don't grow big; they are little, and your creatures will stand above them. And of course, you can always trim them as they start to get too big. But you can also choose if you want to make a food garden. You can use baby carrots because the fluffy tops of them make the most awesome greenery in the little garden. You can use strawberries. You can use a pot of little cherry tomatoes in amongst what you are building is also
It's
amazing.
adorable.
And then, of course, your violas, they're perfect because you can eat them. They taste very delicious and they make a lovely show with their flowers. Then if you're wanting to get creative and if you're into bonsais, it works beautifully with bonsai plants because you've already shaped your plant, your tree into something, and then you create your garden around the bonsai. And that also works exceptionally well. So you can definitely dwarf your alpine white spruce, your Canadian hemlock, your juniper. All of those go to make really, really nice gardens. And of course, you can keep them in their pots and put other things growing around them so that their roots stay as they are, but around them you have now put soil where the other things can grow. So you can create an amazing garden, even going up some stairs. You can do that. And you can have a really beautiful created garden there. Of course, if you your topiary, you can go wild with topiary, changing the shapes of things. You can also put mushrooms, your own edible mushrooms. You can grow edible mushrooms in your fairy garden. How awesome for your fairy to sit on an edible mushroom while they are going. And then your flowering plants that you would probably choose would be your primrose, your cyclamen, your violets, and then ground cover, your miniature ivy, a lot of the creeping ones stay low, and then you can use them as well as part of your growing in your garden, particularly if you're wanting it to go from one level to another. It's awesome to put a creeping ivy into that as well. So have you got some idea of some plants that you
I
might?
do. I have some areas that we just put mulch down, and I just put some plants there. But like I have a rock garden in the front of the house. You know, it's all mulch. It goes into like a real big shape, like a pear shape, I guess. And I have a little section where I have two large rocks there, and I have a garden dog. I have two garden dogs. So I put one dog on top of the rock, and I put a plant, and then there's rocks around there, around one of the plants, and then there's a pretty yellow plant in there. But I'm saying that I love to decorate and design, you know, something creative in the garden, not just put a flower pot and that's it. You know, I like a little more creativity. So
Well,
this gives me a wonderful idea of what I can do, right?
you could.
Continue to do.
There are so many
Mm-hmm.
things you can continue to do. And very often, if you go to some of the nurseries, they have sections where they've got things like gnomes, fairies, and interesting things that you could put into the garden to make it an interesting garden. When I was in South Africa, I
Yeah.
collected penny farthings, and in fact, our cottage was called Penny Farthing Cottage. And all they were all over the garden in different places with pots around them and in them and over them, and that was my theme when I was there. Now this here in Australia, I've chosen a gnome theme instead, and so we've gone with the gnomes, but I can certainly add another penny farthing to the gnomes. It wouldn't do any harm to certainly add him as an extra into that. So there are lots and lots of wonderful things you can do with that. And Marlene, I've redone my garden
Mhm.
one again, and I've added so many more ideas to it. There are some of the original ideas, but there are lots of new ideas as
Oh.
well. I
Oh.
decided I was bored, so I get bored if I'm
It's
going to
so
say
great.
something too many times, and I'm always looking for new ideas. And I think, oh no, that picture's not nice. I'm going to add this one. This would be better. And
Oh.
so all my classes change regularly as soon as I find things
Oh.
that are more interesting to add to them.
Oh,
So
I like that.
there are
Mm-hmm.
lots of lovely ideas coming in for those. But really, your plants, as
Right.
long as you restrict their roots or they are known as a miniature, the sky's the limit because they won't grow any bigger than their root base. So, I mean, I've got a basil in a pot inside that we use for cooking, and I've got a basil outside in a big pot. The basil outside is 2 meters high. The basil inside is this size, and they were bought together. It's just the fact that the one's roots were allowed to take great enjoyment and spread, while the other one has stayed a miniature. So you can miniaturize
Oh.
basically anything if you restrict their roots. And then they will stay small. And then you just prune them to suit whatever shape you are looking for.
That's important, right? Yeah.
And I used to feel very bad about pruning. I thought, oh, shame, poor plant. And then it's immediately picked up and started growing again. I thought, oh, okay, maybe you need to be pruned in order to give me some more. But use plants with color that you help us to keep it a really beautiful garden and lots of
Mhm.
ideas. So
Oh,
here
wow.
are
A
some other
basket.
ideas.
Oh.
Yes, a basket. You've now, oopsie, sorry, I didn't mean to jump. Yes,
Mhm.
a basket. Somebody has sent you a basket of flowers. Now, what do you do with the basket? It goes and
I
gets put
like
in
that.
the attic, or it goes into the garage and it hangs there looking miserable. No, take it, fill it, and turn it into the most beautiful little mini garden. One single fairy, give it a little rabbit as a friend to have in the garden with it, and you can put a little swing, you can put a fountain, you can have birds and bees and butterflies. You can create the most amazing things to add to your garden. So there is another very simple. You could put some of your, if you've got Oh, they're not mussel shells. They're bigger than mussels. Those bigger shells that are
Crabs.
mother of pearls in there. Well, the color is mother of pearl inside.
Right.
You could,
Abalonian?
yes, the Abelonian. You could use those in your fairy garden, in your basket, as either the water feature, or um,
Oh.
you could even build even sort of the sides of a little home, by putting them around a Coke bottle, turn that into, so it becomes a shell garden. And
Hmm.
then you can utilize all your shells in there. And that could be an amazing garden to create.
Oh,
You could also
I'd
use the
love to
shells
learn.
to make seats. If you have the back of the shell as the back of the seat, and then another one facing that way like that, then you could make a seat
Mhm.
out of two shells for your fairy to sit on. And so
That's great.
just let your imagination flow. If you let your imagination go, you can create awesome, awesome things.
I like the
And
birdhouse you have, and the little tiny birdhouse.
yes, yes,
That's cute.
that would be made out of a matchbox probably, or even smaller than a matchbox. And you just paint it
Hmm.
and put a little piece of to make the roof, color it in, paint it. You've got, and put it onto a skewer. You've got a birdhouse.
Oh, I have one that let's see, I bought a birdhouse that is just made, a little one, it's about this big, but it's made out of wood. And I painted it, and I could use that.
Of course,
Oh,
of
you just gave
course.
me an idea. I mean, it's on my windowsill. I have a garden window. It's really pretty. The garden window has like the windows like sort of jut out. I don't know if you know what,
Yes, a bay window,
protrudes
almost like
out, like
a bay
sort of like a
window.
bay window, but you can put a lot of plants there. They call it a garden window. Yeah, but that's a great idea. So I will do that. I'll things that I have in the house, I can now move and create this garden that I'm keeping in mind.
Good.
Yeah,
I want pictures.
my
I want
wheels are working
pictures.
here.
Oh, good.
Right.
I want pictures as it goes. Because, yes, once you let your wheels start to get into motion, you'll be amazed just how creative you will be, and how many things
Mm,
just suddenly you look at something and you go, but I could use that for,
mm.
yeah, that will do for. And suddenly everything falls into place, and you're able to create
Oh, it's so
all these
cute.
different gardens. So don't feel that the garden has to be a big garden, and don't feel it has to be too small. Choose an area of your garden and decide what you would like to put there. I've even seen gardens with a garden fork as your base. Just the fork into the ground, and then round it all the little, it looks like a palisade fence almost, and you've got people
Oh,
looking through it and others playing in front of it. Just one piece of equipment, or something that's old and no longer available to be used. We've got a spade now that doesn't dig anything. So that is my next project, is to find a way of using the
mm,
spade. When Michael and I got
mhm.
married, I used a fork in the garden with I put a watering can in front of it. I put flowers inside the watering can, and wrote on a piece of wood, wedding, and that was just outside our gate.
Ah,
So as the people who came, which was mainly family, because we've got a big family and a
oh,
very small garden, they saw this was the entrance into what we were doing and where we were going.
mm,
So it really, you can do so much, and you could have a little gnome climbing up it, or a fairy sitting on top of it.
oh, oh,
It's
that's great.
amazing. Even a watering can, you can plant in the watering can, and then have the fairy or whatever popping out from the top of it, or and have a
Mhm.
pretend door on the side of the watering can, so it looks like she enters in through the bottom, but here she's looking at you from the top. So you can really
That's great.
just take them. I often take things and I put them in a place, and I leave them for 24
Mhm.
hours and I sleep on it, and I come back and I say, is this the right
Oh,
place?
oh, I
No,
see.
I think this
Mhm.
would be better here. So I move it. Then I leave it. and I look at it again. Sometimes I'll go back to where I first had it. Sometimes I'll go through 3 or 4 places and then say,
Oh.
now I've reached where I want it to be. This is what I want to do, and it stays. So always have your idea of changing things and doing things along the way. So there are so
Right.
many interesting ones that you can do with it. So it really does make it special. But there you've got your teacup. I've got one of those
Yeah.
old-fashioned teacups that was just too big now for tea. It gets
Oh.
cold before I've had a chance to finish it. So that is a perfect thing to have a little miniature garden in. And the little ornaments, the little things that go into the garden at the dollar shops or the shops here in Australia, they are very inexpensive, 50 cents, $1, and so you can just a little bit of that and a little bit of plants and a little bit of your own homemade stuff. Wow.
Oh, it
Uh,
is. Wow.
you can
It's great.
really create amazing things, and things that you actually see in those shops, you realize you can make at home. So you look at them and you think, okay, when I get home, I can actually duplicate that in my own garden. I can duplicate this little thing. I can make it with XYZ. And also, you can find on the net how to make the most awesome fairy and gnome garden furniture, particularly in Pinterest. Pinterest
Oh,
has
Pinterest
some
has. Oh.
awesome ones. And as soon as you put in that you're looking at fairies and gnomes, Pinterest brings up, of course, a whole lot more that you may be interested in. And there are wonderful ones there.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah.
I
Looking
I
forward
had
to that.
I fought to choose what I really wanted, and I can imagine I'm going to change them along the way again because I'll come up with even better ones that I like. So we really do change and change again and get to where we are.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it, Marlene. I hope
I
you
did.
had
I
fun.
really, you gave me some wonderful ideas so I can really bring the gardens alive with a lot of fun and creativity. Yeah, some great
Excellent.
ideas, right.
Excellent.
I'm
And
going to have fun doing it.
that tin can that you did with which will go very nicely for 4th of July. That's a beautiful, you could even utilize
Right.
that and get yourself a little fairy to stand at the base or a gnome
Oh.
and put a little flag in their hand. They are part of it.
Oh,
That
and
can
add
also
that.
be, you add that to, and maybe make a little section just outside your front door for that day that has got that with something else added to it.
Oh,
You
that
can
is
turn it
great.
into something really special. So
Oh,
I love getting your ideas and everybody else's ideas that they've got, because I keep them all and I use them in different places, and I'm able to think, oh, this would work here and there, or it's over here is a nice one, or some such thing. So please continue sending me your pictures. It doesn't have, you don't have to do it through Get Set Up, because they've already given me a link to you, so you can send it directly to me.
oh, okay.
So some other
Thank
ones,
you.
some other related topics that I do are well, not quite related. I'm doing what's on your bucket list tomorrow. All sorts of ideas of what you have on your bucket list, and
That's interesting.
come and make new friends is another one. Our African animals and trivia quizzes. Come make friends is a new one starting on Friday, where people from all over the world come together and you meet people and find out more about each other, which I think could be a very interesting
Oh,
topic.
it's like interacting with
Yes.
the people. Oh,
Yes.
from all over.
From all over. It's come and make new friends all over. And then, of course, there's the birds, which you've done already. Birds in My Garden's another one. So there's a whole variety of new things coming up that we are testing and experimenting with to see how they work with everyone.
Oh, okay.
So keep an eye on it. Every 2 weeks it changes. So keep your eyes open.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
trivia
well,
quiz changes every week. This coming week's trivia quiz is, where do I come from? and I give you different musical instruments or foods or clothes or even movies, some of them, and which country do they come from? A
Oh, I
statue,
see. Uh-huh.
and then you've got to guess which country they come from. So that is Where Do I
Oh,
Come From this week on Thursday. Next week is the 70s. So
mhm.
it's growing up. It was the 60s, now it's the 70s. We will be having a quiz next week on the 70s. But
Oh,
each week
okay.
is different. I think there are going to be 8 different ones that I will be introducing along the way. So it's all different as
Hmm.
it goes.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. That's
uh,
great.
and if you've got anything that you would like to share, their ideas that we have, I will give you some other ideas. Any feedback to tell us how we're doing, whether you like what we're doing, always is a really great thing to help
Right.
me and to help Get Set Up know that we're doing what we need to do. Right. You can also invite friends now. This is a new feature. When you book, you can invite a friend. You can click on invite a friend, and then you can send an email to a friend to join you.
Oh,
Whether
okay.
whether they are somebody who's part of Get Set Up or not, you invite them, and then they can join and be part of what we're doing. So
Oh, good.
that is
Okay.
great, because then you can chat with them afterwards about what you learned in the class or what you saw or so on. So that's a lovely new feature.
Oh,
And and then just if you want to help to host a particular group that you particularly like, please feel free to let them know, and they will team you up with a guide to co-host with you, or even a host on your own. You can suggest new classes, share with other people, or request a session recording at
oh,
help@getsetup.io. It all works through help at Get Set Up. So thank you very much indeed. So,
oh,
mm,
thank you.
thanks a lot for being in class with us. It was great. It was lovely to have a one-on-one with you because you've got so many ideas too.
Oh,
So
it's
for me,
incredible. It's going to be
it
fun.
was a bonus to be able to do it. Thank you, James, for being with us. It's great to have you always. He always puts little tidbits in the um, chat box, which is always great.
Right.
Uh,
Good.
thanks so much. Have a
Okay.
lovely evening. Bye for
Oh,
now.
thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks so much. Appreciate